Welcome back. Be a part of today's show. Follow the conversation online. We're at Channels TV at This Morning, at Harriet Agbinyi, and at Bosun Business. Send an email, of course, to businessmorning@channelstv.com, and we'll be glad to read from you. Now, more IOCs are selling their onshore assets as a number of indigenous domestic companies enter the market. Both in domestic players making strong inroads in the Nigerian market, and well, it's better days ahead.
Yes, there are better days ahead. You never run dry of stories around the energy market, and that is where we are now. But let's start with the, I beg your pardon, a bit of biscuit before coming on air, and these things get you tripped up a little bit sometimes. Okay, so if you look at the energy stocks, let's return to the market yesterday, where the oil and gas folks finished the best performing index on the market yesterday, 2.8%. With the exception of the banking sector, about 0.535%, the rest were largely a negative. So that is story out there now. So let's start with the stocks yesterday. Seplat, the only indigenous oil producing company listed on the London Stock Exchange via an IPO, and our own market was up 5% yesterday at 331.59, touching a new high in terms of its price on the exchange. Forty Oil, I always refer to Forty Oil as the poster boy of that sector. Forty Oil finished 188.65. That's about 4.95% to the upside on about $750,000 shares, 703,000 to put very simply. Sorry, guys. Forty Oil, sorry, that's Forty. Mobil Oil also moved up 5% yesterday, about less than 200,000 shares. MRS surprisingly went off the radar, and we couldn't find data for MRS on the market yesterday. So we took what we had previously, 50-54. We couldn't find any data from some of the sources we had yesterday for MRS. But Oando, the largest indigenous energy trader, for the first time in about a week, saw the share price down 44 points to 1583 on the back of 2.547 million ordinary shares. Total remained sluggish, negative to be precise, 0.38% downside, while Seplat, I talked about Seplat earlier on, 5% on 22,500 units. And of course, corn oil also remained unchanged. And that's what we'll be looking at in the days ahead. Why corn oil remained unchanged, MRS also unchanged. The big boys in that sector, therefore, are the Forty Oil, Mobil, Oando, and Seplat. For now, that's what we're looking at. Now, look at the sector. If you put everybody together in a single basket, this is what you see. Yesterday, 2.92% daily index return. That's moved, that shaved off a little bit of the index return for that sector from 10.5% to end yesterday at 8.2%. That's still not so good because the broader market is about 3.9%. The year-to-date index return in the oil and gas is still negative 8.2%. Price to earnings also changed very slightly because of yesterday's gain from 8.3%, from 8.3 to 8.5. That's price to earnings because those prices have since moved on, and therefore your PER will change. What you call the price to earnings ratio will definitely change, and that's getting closer to where the broader market is at 10, 8.5 versus 10. Dividend yield, of course, unchanged at 3.1%. Those data from United Capital. Now, to the broader energy market, you may have read Chevron. Chevron sold 2 of its oil blocks in shallow waters in the southern part of Bayelsa State. That's south-south. Sold those 2 assets now. 2 oil blocks. Plan to sell those 2 assets in those shallow waters, part of those OML. Get out of that business. That will bring to a total about 4 that Chevron has sold in the onshore part of the Nigeria's oil and gas Niger Delta region. There's been an increase in the number of those sell-off by IOCs, what they call the international oil companies, who are selling off their onshore assets and moving to offshore to do business in Nigeria. They spend years onshore. Now they're yielding some of these assets to indigenous companies like Oando, like Shoreline, and the rest of them to do business. So you find an increasing Nigerian companies, indigenous oil firms, doing business more onshore, while the IOCs move to the high seas to do business. Shell Petroleum has also sell off some of its onshore assets in Nigeria. But where did this money come from? Yes, from the local banks. At the last time we tracked it, Nigerian banks have supported the pickup of these assets from international oil companies to the tune of about $5 billion. In the last 5 years, Nigerian banks have helped local banks. So as soon as Chevron or Shell put this asset on sale, we get some of our local banks are coming in with the cash and helping them to pick them up. That has been part of what's driving the insurance sector. Now you see the nexus there. We'll get to the insurance story very soon on the show. Harriet.
Well,
no, that's the nexus. That's
because
connect the dots.
Yes, we've been trying to connect the dots, or I have been trying to connect the dots, and wondering why we've been seeing the kind of growth we've seen in the insurance sector. Had conversation about it on the program. We're going to still talk about it, but let's go back to this, guys. Chevron, Shell, divesting their assets here onshore and going offshore. It means, well, they're getting more comfortable. Doing business yes.
Offshore. Yes, because again, they faced years and years of militancy and protests on derivation and environmental issues in the Niger Delta onshore. So they're using those assets to local companies, which is also good. You are Nigerian companies, do business with your own people, sort out these issues, but it also allows us to get the local content program up and running for Nigerian companies, expanding our indigenous capacity space within the oil and gas. So that means that in terms of, if you go back to insurance, as soon as these assets are purchased, you need to put insurance, underwriting on it, and that will definitely go mostly to local insurance firms. So this is beginning to help the onshore side of the oil and gas business in the Niger Delta to be owned by majority of Nigerians. In the gas business, you have a number of Nigerian companies doing business along that corridor. Then you find those who are involved in oil and gas logistics as well, getting into it, because as soon as you sell this off to a Nigerian firm, oil firm, like Seplat, Shoreline, whatever, then you find Ladol, the rest of them, getting in there and doing business. Japol Oil and Maritime Services will provide tugboats.
So it's not just the oil and gas industry that we're expecting to see an exponential growth, plus the maritime industry and the value chain along the way.
It's a total value chain, and that is where the insurance underwriting business is expanding also rapidly, because no bank will give you money to purchase an oil block or whatever oil assets or facility
if
or
you don't have good
station,
insurance.
If you don't put insurance on it, it goes, is attached to it back end, and that helped the insurance firms to also start reporting some profit after years of negative financial statement. That is where the industry is right now. And we need to just look there and see that in the last few years, government policies, especially the Local Content Act in the oil and gas, is paying off. And those who are in that business know they're making money. I'm just minding their business. I'm not the one making the money, but I keep an eye on it.
So in terms of making the money, are we going to also expect to see more jobs created?
Definitely.
We're talking about these companies who are already, on ground, making incursion into the onshore business and buying these assets and the rest of it. And we're hoping that while you're doing this, you don't just, bring in expatriates to take over the business. You begin to recruit locally as well to mind the business.
It's how it works. If you can use expatriates 99% to run a Ladol facility, for example. You need indigenous. And I've been at that facility, and I'm not making PR for them. I visited this facility about a year ago, and I saw massive hundreds of millions of dollars investments that they are doing there, and I saw Nigerians working there, and we went on a facility tour. And that is happening across board. But hold on a minute. This Nigerian indigenous oil and gas companies picking up some of the IOC's assets onshore in that sector is also part of the reasons why General Electric is also have this facility in River State, in One, where we're now having Nigerian engineers and technicians building undersea wellhead. Now, that is also significant because you don't build such a facility in River State by General Electric bringing millions of dollars of overseas investments in and taking Nigerians to Brazil and other countries to train them and bring them back home to build this thing. Now, if you build these wellheads, who uses them? These are the same oil companies. Therefore, what is seen in the Niger Delta is that there is a capacity building in terms of engineering, technicians, those who are doing logistics. And as you see more of this asset sale of oil and gas IOCs to the LOCs, which are the local companies, their skills and ability to be part of the global oil and gas business begin to expand. So it's a very gentle reform, transformation, change, whatever you want to call it.
Transformation, change.
That you're beginning to see in that sector. It's very gentle, but it's already happening. And that will continue to expand until someday you see Nigerian oil firm that can go offshore to set up a major oil rig on the ICs and compete with Shell, Chevron, Total, ENI, and the rest of them. ExxonMobil, Esso, Petroleum, what have you.
Okay, so now going by this news that, of course, we have, how do you think the stock market is going to look like in terms of the oil and gas index? Are we going to continue to see some of these players who are actually on the exchange
I think the stock exchange
well?
would want Ladol, for example, to list. I hope they're having meetings with those guys to come and list on the stock exchange. I hope Aliko Dangote's refinery will list as soon as it's set up on the stock exchange to complement the size of Dangote's group business that is already on the NSE. That would be very good. To get a few others also to list on the exchange. But as soon as the new administration resolve the subsidy issue, resolve the privatization and deregulation in that sector, then you can see, we're going to most likely see a very uptrend in the share price of those oil retailers that we have on the market. But I would love to see an oil engineering services that is indigenous, logistics, and the rest also come to list on the market. Not necessarily only those who drill the oil, but those who provide logistics. Those who are, like Japol is already there, Ladol should come, and a few others should also come, just like the likes of Halliburton services. Yeah.
But for such companies, if they can't get to list on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, should they be looking at the option of going to the NASD OTC, for instance, to list?
Yeah, perhaps, but let them list on the big boy. I'm sorry, I'm not making it. Stock Exchange is still the big boy.
Oh, thanks, Wilson.
Okay, don't mind me there.
Well, of course, we'll get to see you, later on the program when we're talking
Yes,
about the insurance
story
business
that the
as
chairman
well.
of Channels Television is in Frankfurt and is visiting the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. John Momo, the chairman and chief executive officer of Channels Television Group, is in Frankfurt in the stock exchange there, and perhaps we'll get across to him within the hour. So what is Channels Television doing at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, or what's Mr. John Momo and the rest of his team doing there? We'll let you know. It's part of our global footprints.
Well, coming up next, how can social innovation deepen economic growth? Join the conversation after this break.